I'm feeling so patriotic right now. Happy Independence Day, Nigeria. We all know that Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation and a global cultural powerhouse. Yet, 65 years after independence, the nation's promise feels unfinished. Now, once a diplomatic heavyweight in the 1970s and the 80s, today Nigeria struggles with fragile democracy, rampant corruption, and chronic insecurity that scars our cities and countryside. Now, some say that our leaders too often chase power and privilege instead of development, and that failure of leadership has dulled Nigeria's voice on the world stage.
But today we ask, why has a giant lost some of its shine? And what kind of leadership will restore our standing? Over the next 90 minutes, we will hear from international and policy affairs analysts and demand answers about how to rebuild trust, secure our people, and reclaim Nigeria's rightful place in the world. My name is Chiwete Onyema. Welcome to 65th Independence Special Broadcast right here on News Central.
And I am Dashen, Usman. Well, over the course of the 90 minutes, we have very important guests with us, to unpack, how far we have come and where we are headed. And we also have our reporters all around the world on standby to give us an idea of how Nigerians are celebrating this independence. Well, first of all, let me introduce our studio guest with us. We have Professor Yomi Fawehinmi. He is organization and human resource expert, and he's here to spend the time with us, on this beautiful Independence Day. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, for being here.
Happy Independence Day to you as well. Are you excited? Because so many people feel as though there's nothing to celebrate.
I mean, excitement, happiness is a choice. I mean, if you've been around for a bit, you'll know that there could be reasons to be happy and there could be a reason not to be happy. But when you think about the countries of the world where, for example, there's a lot of warfare and there is more insecurity that we currently have, then you will be grateful. But when you also think about countries that used to look up to Nigeria now showing us that we're not where we should be, then you'll be sad. I've had to... When I was in school, I had to pray for countries like Ethiopia, like Rwanda. I have grown up in Ibadan and seen the daughters and the wives of the Prince of Saudi Arabia come to give birth at the University College Hospital. I was alive when UCH was ranked the third best hospital in the Commonwealth. Now, so when you think about all those potentials and where we are, you don't feel very happy. When you also think about that, our leaders don't know how to rock Independence Day. I mean, somebody who is president comes on your Independence Day, read the speech, and you are like, so what's next? I grew up.
Like every
I grew up during the time of the military. Those guys knew how to make people happy on days like this. They're just going to announce something. Oh, we're giving cars to all the whatever. They're just throwing something that's like a sweetener, And so part of why you want to listen to the speech was to know what they're bringing out. It's not big, but it's like a child's birthday party.
And it goes a long way as well.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for these leaders to give us your love rights. And all they did is really a speech telling us what has happened. I've achieved 10 things. And I'm like,
we also grew up, having Independence Day parades. And I was saying it yesterday, and this year's was cancelled. I think that of last year's as well.
I'm here thinking, could it be that the government is trying to be sensitive, in quote? Perhaps they also can feel the pulse of the people who say that we have no reason to celebrate.
Well, if followers say there's no reason to celebrate, the role of the leader is to give them a reason to celebrate. I mean, so it's a celebration. Don't forget, and I always try to remind people that the Nigerian Constitution says part of what government should do is to make you happy.
Absolutely.
I mean, Nigeria is one of the few countries in the world that says the happiness of the citizen is part of the role of government. It's not the US clearly says you have a legitimate right to go after the pursuit of happiness. Right? It says you should pursue happiness. The Nigerian Constitution says the government should run in such a way to make you happy. So Governor Sanwo-Olu has a responsibility for happiness. So if we are doing Independence Day and he's thinking about writing a speech, part of what he should come to his mind is what will I say that will make these people happy? I think some of those older leaders knew how to do it. And it's just, you just don't leave people despondent. We have only one Independence Day in a year, and we just don't know how to make it for. So, okay, if you're not going to do a parade, then do a party at Aso Rock. Break the kind of musicians Nigerians love, and just do
like
2 hours.
Concert or something.
Yes, like a concert. When Nigeria, there are ladies. Shout out to the ladies for winning the African Cup of Nations, and for the men that were playing and doing permutations so that they will take points from South Africa and all of that.
But that the prayers are beginning to get answered, though.
Half prayer is better than none. I mean, so we don't still know what will happen. But look at what happened. When the ladies came back, there was a parade around Lagos, and then there was a show for them. Now, people watched the show online. It was fun, right? People enjoyed it. So part of what the country and the leaders need to start to think is how to raise the hope, how to make people happy, how to make people aspire to greatness, to look forward to. I mean, the president in his speech earlier today spoke directly to young people and said, I want you to be happy, the future is yours, and I'm like, so.
It was a speech of hope. He was giving us hope.
I mean, you don't talk hope, you don't look hope for yourself. I mean, you must make people feel that there is hope. A dear friend of mine said he doesn't know why a Nigerian would sell his house and go to another country through the desert. And I said, the problem is hope. I mean, people think hope is not tangible. It's a tangible thing. The reason why you went to school is that you hope for something. So you went to school because you hope for something. You came to work today because you have hope. Once that hope goes, you're not going to stay there. I mean, but think about how this country is making people hopeless. We won African Cup of Nations, the ladies, brilliant ladies, and they got $100,000. We won, the women also won FIBA, the African basketball. Yeah. They also got $100,000, many things.
So it gives them hope that, they would actually participate and, do better next time.
But a young girl won a world competition in education, in English language.
In English, yeah.
And the president did not even receive her. The Minister for Education was the one that received her and gave her money from his pocket. What hope have you given all the other girls who should go to school? I mean, assuming all 3 of them came from the same family. So the first daughter is Asisa Toshola. She plays soccer. She won something in Africa and she got $100,000. You are the dad and you are the mom. Asisa showed up with $100,000 for winning AFCON. Then the next daughter is the lady that wins the basketball, Kalu, right? You are the dad, you are the mom. Shows up with $100,000 on a plot of land for winning FIBA. Then your third daughter wins a global competition in English language, North Africa. And the president didn't call her. The wife of the president didn't invite her. The minister only invited him after a long time and only gave money from the pocket. If you are parents that night and you're going to sleep and you're going to have a conference, if your fourth daughter was looking at all 3, who is going to look after?
Oh, well, it's a good thing you actually mentioned a bit of history, Chiwete.
Yeah, the thing, before we go to that, right, the fact that, you mentioned the fact that, you don't seem to see any form of hope being, expressed from the government as regards this particular independence celebration. But Mr. President frames his, perhaps if they're not giving us hope, perhaps courage might be what they're giving to Nigerians, because Mr. President frames his reforms as courage. But after 65 years, Nigerians at home and, even abroad ask, what does every new leader, what does it look like, when it comes to leadership in Nigeria, when one person finishes an administration and we move to the next person, the person comes up with something new? Because it's funny how you talked about there's no hope right now, but this particular administration got into power screaming renewed hope. But so my question is, why is it that when we have different leaders per time, it looks like we're starting all over? So this person, Buhari, came with change, and now the next person comes with renewed hope. Why is that happening to us?
Quite a number of reasons, but one of the issues is that we have a very poor succession planning process. I mean, if you listen to President Tinubu speak, you won't believe that it was the same party with President Buhari. So he said it today. We met.
Yes.
I mean, it was like
he said they inherited.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, but
and almost collapsed the economy.
But your brother was president, and at that point, your official title was national leader of the political party. So, who are you complaining to? Your man gave you an economy. So part of the problem is, so you even see where you saw in Lagos State, we had situations where we had an APC governor take over and then stops all the projects of the previous governor because he wants to do it. So we have a little bit of a poor transition in leadership. That's one part of it. The other part of it is there's this idea of you want to outshine your predecessors. So even if they were doing something great, there's a sense in which you want to do something to cover that, which is part of the culture we learned from the military. Remember, transition when we were under the military was a coup. So your goal was to show I'm better than the last person. And so all of us in that generation grew up with that mindset that when you get there, and it's not just in government, there are also people, make them a manager in an organization. So part of their first attention is to let people feel the other guy didn't do well. If the other guy wrote him an handover note, he's not going to read it, he's just going to want to start running. So it's a culture that we learned from the military because of our history. But the challenge is that we need to go beyond that. I do not think that when President Tinubu said his slogan was renewed hope, I am not really sure whose hope was being renewed because he didn't tell us. He was never a president, he hoped to be president and he became president. So that's renewed hope for him at a minimum. But to assume that because he had renewed hope, he actually had a bundle of product, resources, investment that will give us hope is not there. But at the end of the day, the Nigerian person is a very resilient person. I mean, we are people that make do with what we have and we excel and we enjoy ourselves while we do that. So the Nigerian has enough hope in his own personal success. The problem is always with what the leadership or what the government refuses to do. Right, and that's where we're having a gap. For the Nigerian, we're doing well as individuals in our private, personal spaces. But just because of the fact that there's a limit to which you can do without your nation, that's where the hopelessness comes. It doesn't come because that same person will say, oh, they don't celebrate independence, there is no hope. Plans to go to Owambe on Saturday. So the personal life, there's a lot of hope that things could be better, but when they think about the nation, they become a bit confused.
Absolutely. Well, we're being told that our correspondent, Amenze Bazwaye in Edo State, is on standby. Amenze, thank you so much for joining us. Please go ahead and share with us how the people in Edo State are celebrating the Independence Day today.
Thank you for having me. The people in Edo State basically have not really celebrated Independence Day the way we used to see it in the past, where you get to see some persons moving down to the stadium where there will be march past and other different activities ongoing. Today is quite different from that. None of such activities were held. The only significant thing I can tell you right now is that the Edo State Government House, there was a praise and worship session that was held, and of course prayers also for Nigeria right there at the Government House Chapel. You had a lot of persons, both within the government house and outside the government house, coming through to, of course, fellowship together and call on God for Nigeria at 65. If you move down to the streets, most people are just going about their daily activities, basically just taking advantage of the public holiday. We went to some recreation centers where we saw some families there, parents taking their children out. Of course, children are not in school today. So they took their children out, of course, just to relax and unwind. Talking to some persons earlier today, most of them are just saying there's not much to celebrate in Nigeria. We need to have our government, of course, do more to ensure that more people smile. But I'm not going to be talking alone. I have someone standing here. He was actually here the day Nigeria gained its independence back in 1960. I am standing here with a constitutional lawyer, and of course, he's also a notary public, the person of Sir Adams Ali. Good afternoon, sir, or good evening, sir, rather.
Good day to us. Thank you, moderator. I remember as if it were yesterday, October 1st, 1960. I've left for my school almost 20 college. It was a day of razzmatazz, fanfare. We were giving food to eat, we were giving national flag to wave, and we have learned the Nigerian national anthem, Nigeria within the genesis. I mean, that's by heart. We march and simply, with vitality and vitality, we celebrated it. Kudos to our dear founding fathers, the Prime Minister Tafa Balewa, Sultan Ahmadu Bello of Sokoto, Kotuevo of Molkadi here, Zik as governor in Eastern Region, Awolowo as governor in Western Region. They labored to get this independence. They attended many constitutional conferences, independent in India, and securities. And they do not work for themselves. They work for the society. And you can count their blessings, which is at variance with what we have today. People are egoistic. Some of our leaders think only of themselves. They don't go along with Section 14, subsection 2, sub 2 of the Constitution 1999. We provide that security and welfare, they are the aim of governance. Are we secure today? Yes. No. We cannot travel safely to Abuja or anywhere else. We cannot sleep with our 2 eyes closed. Welfare of the people. Michael Stewart, in his book, The British Constitution, told us, salus populous, suprema lex, the welfare of the people in the supreme law. Welfare, health services, 0. Education is getting more costly, no longer free at all level. Employment, many people graduate are unemployed. Agriculture, green revolution is not available, so the welfare of the people is background. So I can say that we might be optimistic. We are independent nation, 65 years, but it is not yet Uhuru. And we have reached Nigeria will reach the El Dorado if our leaders show the lights, lead the followers, and stand the way. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Barrister Adam Sali. You heard him right there. Nigeria can only move forward if our leaders do the right thing, and they can't take us, of course, to El Dorado. Basically, from the noon, it's been really raining from morning up until now. The rain has been coming down non-stop. I think earlier on he mentioned that the day of independence back then in 1960, it actually rained heavily, and it's been like that every October 1st from time immemorial.
Blessing.
All right, that's a sign of blessing.
Yes.
All right, so that's so much we have for you from here in Benin City.
Many thanks, of course, to you, Ameze, for giving us that update as regards how Nigerians are celebrating in Benin, Edo State. We still have our professor here, Professor Yomi Fawehinmi, and we're just having a conversation about Independence Day. Now, you could see from what Adams Aliyu said, basically, comparing the very first day, 1960, how much there was a lot of hope and a lot of expectations from Nigeria, and what the reality is now. We can tell that there's a huge gap in that. What would you say is responsible for Nigeria's crisis right now? Would you say it's lack of ideas or lack of leaders willing to execute what they should do?
Great question. Thanks for asking. John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. I think the biggest challenge we have is with leadership. We have a leadership that has not risen up to the demands of making a nation very great. And when we say leadership, there's a sense in which people think we're talking about only the elected leaders. It's just leadership across the spectrum of what defines Nigeria. So it's leadership in the public sector, the minister, a governor, an appointee, a permanent secretary, and all of that. Leadership in the private sector, a CEO, a manager, a supervisor in the workplace, or leadership in the civil society, whether it's the Labour Congress or whether it's whatsoever. It's the fact that the quality of our leadership seems to be growing, seems to be reducing over the years. I mean, there was a time in which it was predictable what you should say when a Nigerian leader speaks, right? So when you're thinking about, and the great gentleman who spoke now from Benin City mentioned names. You know what you will get when an Awolowo speaks, or when a Zik speaks, or when an Okpa speaks, right? When Mbadiwe speaks, there's a level of expectation. There was also a level of competition between those individuals that made a lot of difference. So for example, when later Awolowo was the premier of Western Region, for example, he decided to start a TV station. I mean, this man went abroad to convince Dunlop, to convince Michelin to come here and created that industrial estate. Immediately he started that, the guys in the East said, you started one, we'll start two. So that's why you have Independence Avenue in Enugu, and you also have Transamadi in Port Harcourt. And then you had the whole of Kaduna becoming the textile hub.
Yeah.
So these governors, they didn't have, these premiers, they didn't have a governor. You know, we have a Nigerian Governors Forum now. They didn't have necessarily a premiers forum, but they had this sense of competition that if you do one, I'm going to do two.
Well, was that a bad thing?
It was good, and that was what led to development. Because what happened was that and you know, one of the defining qualities of federalism is that each federation state can do something. If they fail, the others won't try it. But if they succeed, the others will learn from it. And that was why between 1955, 1956, to like when we had the coup, unfortunately, this country was growing very well because these leaders were competing in terms of who is going to be a better leader. But think about what happens now. Is that what is happening? Does the governor of Kaduna State look at the governor of Edo State and say, this was done, I will also do it? No, it wouldn't happen. So part of it is we are not having leaders that are competitive. Think about it. We're talking about foreign policy, for example. Those guys have a clear policy direction. They knew what they wanted to do with Africa. They knew what they wanted to do with West Africa. What is our foreign policy today?
And I just want to ask, looking at Nigeria's foreign policy over the years, looking from 1960 up until now, at different points, at different administrations, we've had different foreign policies. What would you say is responsible for our inconsistency over time based on our foreign policy?
Well, thanks. Very quick question. I mean, it still comes back to the question of leadership and the quality of leadership we had. There was a time when it was clear Nigeria had a defined policy direction that was backed up with action. So Africa was a focus of our foreign policy, and we took deliberate actions to back that up. So whether it was the way we resource, I mean, Nigeria was one of the biggest supporters of the anti-apartheid movement, ANC, and all of that. I remember as an undergraduate, we had students from other African countries, from South Africa, whose parents were locked up for various reasons, coming to spend vacation in universities. I mean, so that itself was part of our contribution. There were people from African countries that went to university on the bills of Nigeria. We did that deliberately. We withdrew from competitions just because of the fact that I wanted to make a statement for Africa. You remember under General Abacha when we withdrew from the African Cup of Nations, we also had some things that we did in terms of very strong stance we took about nationalization of assets of some countries just because we wanted to make a point that we care about our African brothers. But it has happened over the years that it seems as if we started to not to be too focused in terms of what we really want. I know it also is a mixed match of what we did and what we did not do. I mean, can anybody explain to me why we still don't have ambassadors in many countries to date? I mean, somebody's going to be asking questions. Why don't you have an ambassador in that country? Could somebody explain to me why, for example, the president was not at the United Nations General Assembly? I mean, you send a vice president. When you go to the UN, who represents you matters. It doesn't mean the vice president does not have a clout, but he's the vice president, not the president. And then you ask yourself, very interestingly, we had our president go to Brazil. It's in South America twice in the last 4 months. Went to St. Lucia in South America. How does a human being go 3 times to South Africa in the last 3 months, and then he goes to the greatest collection of presidents like him and is absent? If I was a foreign analyst for a country, I'm going to ask that question. Why the affinity to these countries and not at the UNGA? So it's those things that start to make people ask questions. What exactly is this country doing? Where are we absent from? Where are we present? How can you be over present in Brazil but under present in the US? I mean, based on your strategic interests, where should you put more attention? We saw what happens with the Francophone security countries in ECOWAS, for example, at the point in which some of them started to say they wanted to withdraw. How do we lose control of ECOWAS? I mean, we had our hands around the whole of Africa at a point, and today we're struggling to even keep ECOWAS together. What we did, what we didn't do.
What you said reminds me of what someone said about Nigeria once playing a lead, even in the UN, the non-aligned movement, the African Union peace missions. But today you have the likes of South Africa and Kenya overshadowing Nigeria at global forums. So they're asking if Nigeria is still the giant of Africa.
I think that Nigeria is still the giant of Africa, as long as we don't define what that means.
We're still big brother.
I mean, we're still giants of Africa.
Is it really a ceremonial title now? Or is that really...
Did anybody really appoint us? I mean, was it like some people gather and say, thou shalt be the...
when you claim a title and nobody opposes you, then perhaps they agree with you.
It sticks.
Okay, so if I say I'm the giant of this room,
yes.
I mean, since there's no meaning to it, I can be. You can also be the giant. I mean, so the point is that those people that said we were the giants of Africa were selling a vision to Nigerians. And the idea was for us to have that sense of we're big, we're strong, we're reliable, we're resilient, we're rich. They were trying to work on our minds to have that strength. And you see it when we interact with other Africans.
All right, Professor Fawehinmi, let's just, put a halt there and connect with our correspondent who is in Benue State at the moment, Chiwete Anyo. Chiwete, thank you so much for joining us. If you can hear me, please go ahead and share with us what the feel is like in Benue.
Okay, thank you very much. Dashen. Benue is calm and peaceful, precisely marked here. Earlier today, I went around some places in the state, in the capital, the state capital, and I noticed that everybody was going about their normal businesses. As a matter of fact, the entire place was empty. People seemed like they were celebrating in their own homes, or they were like, they didn't have a reason to come out to celebrate. I went to the IDB square earlier, where such events usually take place, but I met a total, I met an empty space from other locations as well, and we saw that people would rather stay in their homes. And then I spoke to a couple of them, and they mentioned to me that they did not have a reason to celebrate, so they would rather spend this public holiday with their loved ones in their homes and have fun at home. Then I saw a couple of people, maybe dancers and some entertainers, heading towards the government house in Makudi, and that is the location where I am right now at the government house in Makudi here, where some Benue entertainers have gathered to celebrate the Independence Day along with the governor of Benue State for the high stakes earlier. Unfortunately, the governor is not here with them. He has sent word that he has more important things to deal with at the moment, referring to the insecurity in Benue State at the moment, that he is going through some meetings and trying to resolve some issues, and so he cannot be here to celebrate with the entertainers. And they have been here, from what I heard, some of them have been here since morning. They have not had water to drink or food to eat or anything. They have been waiting on the governor to talk to him. And while I was conversing with a couple of them, I said, what is the significance of this event, this festival that you are doing? How does this connect to Nigeria's 65 years? And they were like, they just want to commemorate it with the governor and to show their support that they are with him. And they are also saying that they believe that since Nigeria is celebrating 65 years, that somehow Benue will also be a beneficiary of this 65 years anniversary, and that something good will come out of it. And that's why they are here to encourage the governors to keep doing what he is doing at the moment. But so far, they have been stuck here. Nobody is moving anywhere. If you permit me to turn the camera a bit, you will see that these are some of them here. These are some of them here. They have been here all day.
What is happening there?
But yes, they are trying to connect. They want to see him. According to them, they want to celebrate Nigeria 65 years with the governor of Benue State, and also state their own intentions for the entertainment industry in Benue State. But unfortunately, the governor is not around. And he has sent word that unfortunately he will not be at the end of the day. But this have reached out to other local government areas, and they have confirmed that nothing is going on in those local governments, at least not officially. So even this one is just a group of entertainers in Benue State who are here. So it's not an official celebration.
Many thanks, Chiwete Anyo, for giving us updates from Benue State. We apologize, but we can't really hear you clearly. Can you hear us? Thank you very much for that update. Looks as though just the same thing we had in other states where people are not showing so much enthusiasm as regards celebrating the independence. Is there, I know we've talked about leadership in Nigeria over the years, but is there something that we, the citizens, are not doing?
In terms of today? Or?
In terms of over the years, in terms of just sitting back and just, because we see these things happen, even when you have election, even on election days, you see that people are not interested. You see people probably playing football, you know, on the street as opposed to going to actually carry out their civic duty.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's this theory in social research and social observations that makes people to choose to become pedestrian once they know their opinion will not matter. Right? So if, for example, I wanted to vote here and I say, let's vote. There are two candidates there. Your vote will determine who wins the election. Right? If you vote for A, he gets it. If you vote for B, he gets it. Right? And I tell you that your vote will determine who wins that. You will likely vote. Right? But if you feel that your vote does not count, and that's what has seemingly happened over the years, then people will start to have detachment from events like the voting centers. If people on election day, on Independence Day, have not heard some things that will make them happy, then they don't want to even listen to it. I mean, if people think that the nation is not working in their interest. So, like I say, it's the leaders that need to bring people there. I mean, she gave a very brilliant and interesting report that some people said they want to meet with the governor, and the governor is not available, for example. I mean, those people have done what they can do. That's hey, you are the father of the state.
And you talked about it earlier as well, that the people don't even have access to their leaders.
Yeah, so, I mean, how is it possible? I mean, the number 10 Downing Street is on the street. I mean, it's on the streets. I mean, it's on the streets. If you go to the US before we started to have all those violent attacks, if you wanted to go to the White House, there's a process for you to apply to go on a guided tour of the White House. The guided tour does not mean you're going to meet the president, but you can go through there. There is a process. I went to Angola, and I was shocked when I was trying to get into the United States Embassy, for example, and they dropped the taxi that brought me, just dropped me, and I said, where's the place? He said, that's the place. And I remember Ejike Crescent or Water Carrington, what it takes to see the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria, for example. So we have not allowed people to feel they are part of the Nigerian nation. We have not deliberately enabled people's emotional commitment to this country. And it is when we are deliberate about it that it's going to happen. We once had a situation in this country. We're playing a match. I don't know if you remember the match. Taribo West was one of our players. He got injured. Yeah. And they said they were going to take him out. And I said, no, I'm not going to go out. We must win this match. And then they took him out. They sutured. They gave stitches to that guy. Whatever he says now, you may not like it. But anytime I remember that sacrifice, I know this guy loves this country. Yeah. They gave this guy stitches on his head right beside the pitch. Immediately they had the bandage and he came back. Unfortunately, we lost that match. But think about what kind of coach made him to feel he should do that for his country. Today, do you think any member of the Super Eagles would do the same thing?
Would be that patriotic?
So it's those things that start to determine how people engage on days like this. We need to be very deliberate to make a country engaging. So today, the governor goes somewhere, he speaks about it, the president, the ministers. Does he make people feel they are loved, they are appreciated, and they should be celebrated? And so when days like this come, the people also just go about their daily bread.
So let's quickly talk about, the diaspora paradox. You mentioned, about going to the embassy and all that. And we know that as of now, Nigeria's passport ranks amongst one of the weakest in Africa, which is quite sad if you ask me. So 65 years after the independence, right? Does this reflect a failure of diplomacy?
I think so. I think we've not really done. I think we have not built on some of the things we had. I mean, we've had a country where, for example, you had Onyema who was I can't remember what was his official title with the Commonwealth. We had a time when we had Nigerians jostling to become the Secretary General of the United Nations. Of course, remember President Obasanjo, before he became president, wanted to become the UN General Secretary. Before he went to Boutros Ghali, I think, was the guy that got it. We had people like Joe Keshi, for example, who was a military man but was very effective. We had professors of international. We had a National Institute of International affairs here in Lagos. I had people like Professor Akiteru, Professor Joy Ogu. I mean, these were, so we had the professionals, intellectuals who are running international organizations. You also had the professionals who are doing the boots on the ground that was happening in various countries. And then you also now had the intellectual backup. When you have a place like the NIA, for example, ask the average Lagosian, what is NIA? And he's going to wonder, what's that, right? So you had that system working to support what we're trying to do. It seems as if we have just backtracked. I mean, like I asked earlier, we don't currently even have ambassadors selected for various countries. So when that happens, then people, sometimes in diplomatic world, there is this, they attempt you. And then depending on how you react, they backtrack. So think about what happened.
During COVID,
yes,
especially when they stopped planes from Nigeria, and then Nigeria retaliated,
and then
opened,
I mean, look at what has happened. The U.S. government came with tariffs. The Trump president came up with tariffs. Some countries hit back. Now they are talking and having negotiation about it. What did Nigeria do about tariffs, for example? Well, so and if you are not there, Yoruba person says, there's a Yoruba proverb that says that if you are not at home and your goat give birth, it's only good to have one kid. Because actually that goat might have given birth to 3. But because you are not there, somebody has taken and said it's only given birth to 1. So our absence in some of those things is determining what we'll look at, for example, conversations like...
Well, just before you go on, we have our other guest, Chiwete.
Yeah, we have Ambassador Joe Keshi join us right now. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. If you can hear me, I'd really love you to indicate that. But I'd love you to answer this question, of course, which has to do with Nigeria's foreign policy. Looking at what's happening right now, we're looking at the fact that Nigeria often describes Africa as the centerpiece of its foreign policy. How has this principle shaped relations with Nigeria and other African countries?
I think you have to go back in history. That 65 years ago, precisely, I think on the 2nd or 3rd of 1960, the Prime Minister then, the one and only Prime Minister of Nigeria that we had, Sir Tafawa Balewa, stood at the floor of the United Nations General Assembly and laid out the cardinal principles of Nigeria's foreign policy, which has continued to a large extent to guide our foreign policy behavior. And one of those issues that he raised was to put Nigeria at the center of African leadership. And he made it very clear. And obviously, even at that time and as now, there were so many things that kind of created, quote unquote, this manifest destiny for Nigeria as a leader, within the emerging African continent at that time. One was the population, one was the fact that quite a number of countries saw Nigeria as a great potential. In fact, there was a New York, report that actually spoke of the rise of Nigeria as an African giant among the emerging nations. And so for quite a long time, we actually lived up to these expectations in the sense that on a number of African issues, we were there at the center of it. We championed the causes. Look, we played a significant role. Never mind what anybody says today. We played a significant role in the decolonization of Africa. And particularly, I was involved in Namibia and to some extent, South Africa as well. We helped in resolving a number of African issues and crises. And there was a time in our foreign policy history that no decision will be made on Africa without Nigeria being consulted. And so to a significant extent until recently, we actually lived to expectation as projecting ourselves as that spokesperson, as that leader within the African continent. But in the last couple of years, a number of factors, I simply describe them as our own internal contradictions, has affected our ability to rise up to that occasion where other African countries are now, trying to, I won't use the word compete, because again, for a number of African countries, when you use such word, they think that Nigeria is a bit arrogant. But when you look at the speeches that were made at the last, at the ongoing General Assembly, you will find out that the president of South Africa, the president of Kenya, the president of Ghana, just like the president of Jamaica, their statement was Afrocentric. They were very broad in the way they presented the case, not just for the black world, but also for the continent of Africa. We were a little bit too, we domesticated most of our contributions. We didn't sit down well with quite a number of us. But that said, look, we are still a great nation. We still have the potentials, but we need to resolve. We need to resolve a number of our internal contradictions, because at the end of the day, foreign policy is an extension of domestic policy.
Ejike Okpa, an international and policy affairs analyst, has also joined us. Thank you so much, Mr. Okpa, for joining us at this time.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations for the celebration going on over there.
Happy Independence Day to you as well, sir. So we're still talking about how Nigeria is seen globally, and he actually laughed, because I know how you feel, about Nigeria. But then let's talk about the fact that Transparency International has actually ranked Nigeria amongst the more corrupt state. Speak to us on that. Does that single metric do more damage to us, than insecurity and poverty?
All of the above listed below. When Nigeria, when Nigeria looks at its history from 1914, when it was amalgamated, into 1960, when it got independence, you got to find out where are the glaring, shining examples of Nigeria. Is corruption they know is like a DNA in Nigeria. Nigerians don't seem to get away from it, whether you're a gate man or you're the president. It's not a question of corruption. But this is a question of dealing with it, acknowledging that this is part of what is holding Nigeria back, and being able to confront it. Most Nigerians, in today's Nigeria, there are only 37 people that are important in that country. The president and 36 people. And you're looking at 200 million or so people, and they haven't been able to deal with it even from 1999, in this new, system of government. So if, Nigerians don't need to look to Transparency International to tell them what is going on. Nigerians have to look themselves in the face, in the eyes, and say, hey, enough of this. Festus Okotiebo, when he was, finance minister, he single-handedly took more than 10% of Nigerian resources at the time, because Tafawa Balewa was ignorant of financial, bookkeeping. Zik himself didn't understand it. So Festus Okotiebo was the one who started this stuff in 1963 when they had an African ministerial summit in Ghana. And Lee Kuan Yew gathered his ministers and said, hey, this is not how to be a foreign minister, because Festus Okotiebo was spending money. So since then till now, you could look at that history and see Nigeria hasn't been able to correct itself. You don't need an outside people to tell you that. You got to look at yourself internally and find out that you haven't performed. Nigeria is the most populous black nation in the world. When I met Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta King, in March 1999 at the reception for Obasanjo, she said to me, if Nigeria is the country the black race is going to look up to, the black race is doomed. People can debate that all day long. Nigeria got electricity 14 years after America, 1896, even before China. Today, Nigeria, with all the claim of professor of engineering and all that other stuff, they can't even build electricity more than the 80,000 capacity they have. So these are the things that you don't need the world to come and tell you. You got to look in your house and clean your house. Nigeria, so far, yes, you have potential, but potential don't mean anything until you act like it. And that is what I'm hoping in the next, we don't have to be 65 again, in the next 10 years. If Tinubu is to be the president that he said it is his turn to be, let him show it. When he took over 3 years ago, Naira, what was the exchange rate? And today, if you have 1 million Naira, you have about $600. When I left Nigeria in the 80s for America, if you had 1 million Naira, you have almost $1.7 million. Wow. If you have financial modeling, you look at present value, future value, holding time, and you solve for I. If you push the I on your computer, that number will be blinking until you go to London and come back and you get an extended error. That's what they need to be talking about. Strengthening the purchasing power of the Naira, not Tinubu running around the whole world looking for money, or even show that Nigeria doctors can treat their president and top executives. Not when they get sick, they get in the plane and go abroad. So what is the shining example? Ask yourself the question, is it the universities?
Mr. Professor, but I'll just have to interject you right there. Sorry, that's because we're pressed for time. But right now we're being joined by an investment strategist, Nathan Olaniyi. If you can hear me, Mr. Olaniyi, I'd like to ask you, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy, at least on paper, right? Yet our Naira has fallen to a record low and per capita income still stagnates. Why does economic size not translate into global clout for Nigeria?
Thank you very much for having me. And I mean, very great question and good debate ongoing, all around. I mean, size is just headline as far as, a lot of us, and as far as finance investment specialists, are concerned. Clout is more of a habit. Nigeria's GDP may, headline as one of Africa's largest, but power in global circles, comes from consistency, legitimacy, and leverage behind the scenes. Some fresh signals throughout the year, especially on this kind of Independence Day. A few days ago we saw that Q2 GDP grew 4.23%. Inflation is down to about 20%, and external reserves are growing. But so many Nigerians still live under extreme strain. The numbers are out there about 129 million below the poverty line. Big numbers really do not mask the fragility of the economy that we have today. Your currency, with the currency, our institutions, and trust is still very volatile. A lot of investment is coming in, but how much of that investment goes into building the infrastructures that would improve the country? International partners, the FDI that is coming in, they don't just look at size, they look at risk. So when we stand up here, we won't brag about GDP. We shouldn't, I mean, that's some improvement. We are glad that we are growing, but most of all, I would say that we must turn that scale into reliability until, capital partners and investors, both, domestic and international, until those people and global voices see Nigeria as not just a jurisdiction that you invest in for short-term gains, but somewhere you can put in your long-term capital. We are still a promise, really, no matter how old we are as a nation. We are still a promise, really, not a posture in terms of that size that we have.
All right, Nathaniel, you talked about, the FDIs coming in, and I want to forward my next question to Ambassador Keshi. Ambassador, we know that Nigerians abroad, right, remit over $20 billion, keeping the economy afloat as well, because the average diasporan, sends cash, influence, and even expertise. So why has the government or why hasn't the government built credible channels to convert these remittances into global influence? Ambassador Keshi?
That's a very good question you've asked, and I think that's also a question we should ask the Diaspora Commission. Let me first of all say that I was in the forefront for the establishment of the diaspora engagement with the Nigerian states, and that journey began when I was in Atlanta as the Consul General of Nigeria. That was when I saw the tremendous amount of talents outside the shores of Nigeria, and why, for example, it was necessary to begin to mobilize the Nigerian diaspora. And when we started the mobilization, our focus was, the way I describe it, was the diasporans that had the capacity, to contribute to Nigerians' development. And we were looking at that time at what the Indian experience. For example, there was a time when the Indians started, the first thing they did was to put money together and build a 40 million electric plant, in India, which of course, contributed a lot to some of India's progress. And we thought that we could do the same thing here in Nigeria. I remember, meeting the then governor of the central bank to make a case for us to be able to tap into the diaspora resources and so on. And I was told at that time that it would be very challenging given where we were at that time, So the problem is we have not been able to mobilize this fund collectively for development, because I do not think we have created the appropriate or the necessary structure to do things like this. Look, Nigerians are investing here and there in Nigeria. Let's not, make a mistake about that. Nigerians abroad are investing in Nigeria. They are doing well in putting their money in the stock market. The medical group, many of them are establishing hospitals in Nigeria, or they are working with some Nigerian hospitals whereby they travel in and then help do some very critical, surgeries. But look, for us to feel the impact of the Nigerian diaspora, there must be the involvement of a critical mass of the diasporans in certain key areas of Nigeria's development. And I normally identify these areas. Number one, you talked of investment, but there's education. There's also ICT, because in education we have a number of people out there, professors, well-qualified professors who can help, particularly our university. Remember that there are a couple of universities in this country that do not have qualified professors. Also, in the area of ICT, there are a number of Nigerians out there, and of course in the area of health, where, as I said, they are doing very well. I think what we need to find is, what we need to do moving forward is to create that structure that will enable the diaspora to invest in, in key developmental projects in this country. Until that structure is in place, and there is trust and there is confidence, we must bear that in mind. There is trust and there is confidence that they will not put in their money today and then tomorrow they lose a lot of money. I'm not too sure that, So what did the diaspora do? All this money that the diasporans are, again, I make a point, quite a number of diasporans are investing in Nigeria. But the bulk of the money goes to support family members and a number of family things. And some of them are building houses and estates in Nigeria. That's an investment too. But it might not have gotten to that level or that stage where I think that the diaspora has the capacity to do more than they are currently doing.
Answering that question. My next question goes back to Nathan Olaniyi. Of course, we know at independence, agriculture fed the nation and even, powered exports. But oil changed that. Today, with, energy transition looming, do you think Nigeria has missed its chance to diversify?
Please, can you unmute your mic, Nathaniel?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, the short answer is no. I believe we still have a chance, but of course, the window is closing. The money you don't make today, you probably won't have a chance to make it tomorrow. That one is gone, right? The transition is real, and we need to act while we still have the resources to underwrite some of these changes that we are talking about. I mean, the Dangote refinery is, once maybe call it a swing for petroleum independence. It recently paused, petrol sales in Naira due to crude oil supply constraints, raising eyebrows from the international community. I was reading one newspaper a few days ago, and strong opinions there. The refinery reserved the pause, right? Soon after government intervention, resumed sales in Naira. I mean, there are a lot of different fronts. There is the AI boom that, a lot of companies, startups are doing some interesting work in, on the regional front, there is, the energy and power side of things. So beyond the petroleum and crude oil and all of that, of course, there is always a window to diversify. A lot of the GDP growth that we have seen over the last few months, and even when we had record inflation, a lot of that GDP growth was, driven by the services sector. So we have strong institutions. We just need to make them stronger and give them the opportunity, to go beyond just being buckets of contribution here and there. We cannot drop oil overnight, definitely, but we should, channel some of the resources that we have. Like he was just saying, a lot of investment is coming in. Some of that investment is what you call hot money in investment terms. They are not going, like I said earlier, to building infrastructure, to contributing to education and a lot of those other things. So, but again, like I said, we need to channel resources from not just into money market investment, but building new sectors. We have processing, we have agri-tech, we have logistics, we have battery minerals, right? So those are some of the industries that we can, begin to go into diversifying. Of course, agriculture and AI, a lot of things can, help us do really well in those spaces. But we must move fast, apparently. So even though I say that we can still diversify, we've not lost the chance to diversify. Okay. We really need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more capital and technology would go elsewhere. A lot of countries are doing really well now. Rwanda is a very good opportunity. So my closing statement, in answering that question is, of course, we can still ride some of these tailwinds if we decide now. The government decides now to invest in the upstream of the future. Where is the future moving to? What are some of the things happening now that we can use to augment the mistakes that we've made in the past, not just, exporting crude.
All right, now speaking of augmenting the mistakes of the past, just before we come back to Professor Fawehinmi, let me pass this question to Mr. Okpa. Now, Mr. Okpa, we know that the president, during his speech praised the diaspora Nigerians, calling them ambassadors. But what else, beyond the applause? Are you also of the school of thought that government should institutionalize diaspora voting, investment guarantees, and even dual citizenship privileges, to make them real stakeholders? Generally, how much should the diaspora community contribute, to governance reform?
In 1994 or 2004, I spoke at a forum at The Hague, and Ruben Amwati was invited to debate me on Nigeria going forward. He didn't show up. I think there's an undue expectation placed on the diaspora community. I didn't come to America on behalf of Nigeria. When I send money, I send it to my family members. So if anybody's talking about diaspora, what you gotta do is, has the diaspora money stabilized in Naira? naira. You have to go to sector investment. Because I sent my family member this amount of money doesn't mean that I'm investing in them. It's just like a welfare system, because Nigeria doesn't have a welfare system. Keshi talked about India. India floated what they call the India Growth and Opportunity Fund that was floated on the New York Exchange. That's how they were able to raise money. Nigeria has never done that. So we already talk about diaspora and what they're going to do. Focus on the 200 and something million Nigerians. There are less than 1 million Nigerians in America. Even if they vote, what difference is it going to make? When I met Obasanjo when he was president-elect in Atlanta, and I asked him, what can I do to make you a better president? He was shocked at that question. What he turned around to say to me, if every Nigerian can send $100 a month to their family member, that would do. And I was like, what kind of president thinks about that? You have to look at what is going to make the naira a preferred currency for investment in Nigeria. Not when you're all over the place looking for the pound, the dollar, and the this and that. What was Nigeria doing in the 80s to stabilize their naira, such that naira is, have more value than ever? Can anybody think about that and bring it back? No, they're not doing it. They're talking about diaspora. Diaspora in America. The first Nigerian that was recorded to come to America was a Calabar man in 1918. Nigerians in America today don't have any bank, any community bank. There's no zip code or census tract in America that Nigerians dominate. They come here just not like other immigrants who come in a group and they take a piece of America. So there are a lot of things Nigerians home and abroad haven't really focused on to make themselves relevant. The people that have left. Building a home in my village, do I pay taxes on it? Do all those homes they build, you go to Igbo land, most people here abroad are building homes, but then when they die, those things fall to ruin. You have to look at what creates revenue to the local government. You look at the IGR of most states, is less than 25%. If you take out the allocation they get from the federal government, 80% or so of Nigerian states are not viable. So you got to talk about those things. Forget the diaspora. Those are the ones that have gotten away. If they want to come back, go back home. But don't put any emphasis on them because they are not relevant to what Nigeria needs to take off. Focus on the people you see every day and leave the diaspora people out of it. If they want to come home just like they left Nigeria, I left Nigeria by choice. If I want to go back home, I don't need anybody to owe me. But if somebody wants to recruit me, then come for the talent recruitment. But don't feel I have an obligation to Nigeria because Nigeria didn't send me to America as a missionary or on behalf of most immigrants. If the white Europeans that came to America were focusing on Europe diaspora, they would have built the country they built. It's only the poor nations, people in Mexico, Nigeria, Africa say diaspora. They have left. They have left. Create your own internal resources.
Thank you, Mr. Okpa, for responding to that question. I'm just going to bring this. My next question is coming, of course, to our in-studio guest, Professor Fawehinmi. Let's talk about insecurity, because whether we like it or not, our international reputation, of course, is being tainted by the fact that we're still dealing with terrorism. Now, for a country that has been engaging in peacekeeping since 1960, and right now we can't even guarantee peace in our own country. What does this tell about our reputation outside?
I mean, it's not a very good story, particularly when you start to see how, we had a very unfortunate case of the lady that died in Abuja. My condolences to the family. She's a member of the media. You hear stories like that. You hear of the attack that happened in Kwara State just this week. You feel saddened because of those things happen, but you feel more saddened at the response of the leaders afterwards. I was expecting that the governor of Kwara State should be in Kwara State by now, consoling his people. I saw him in Abia State welcoming the president. Why should anybody take you serious if there was an attack in your state and you're welcoming the president in another state? Even the president going to another state a day after that tells a totally different story. Now, this country has done well. There was a time when the Nigerian police was given a recognition for being one of the best policing peacekeeping forces in the world. The same Nigerian police force. These guys go abroad and they are the coolest guy, right? You know, I mean, everybody's cool when you go leave this country. Now, it means that we can start to use those things to show look at what happened with EPCOMOG. I mean, how we made a difference in Liberia, how we made interventions in other countries. But as we start to have a lot of this in security, it seems as if we could not even keep our house in order. And that started to influence how people called us on help there. But again, you know, like I said, everything falls and rises on leadership. Why do we have insecurity? According to Nigerian laws, the AK-47 rifle, I'm sure you know what is AK-47.
Yeah.
45 years ago, the average Nigerian of our age would not know what is AK-47. Because in Nigerian law, only one person can give you approval to bring in an AK-47, the president. But today, every Nigerian knows there are even people whose nicknames are AK-47. I mean, so how did leadership become that porous that a weapon that is so lethal is what we all know about? But if leadership was effective with all these ungoverned spaces, when people talk about Sambisa Forest, for example, and we start to dread it, and you ask, how come is it possible that we can have portions of Nigeria that is ungoverned? I used to work in the Niger Delta. I met a guy from Bayelsa State. The guy told me, I wouldn't believe it, but that he never saw a policeman till when he went to the University of Port Harcourt. Because he grew up, there is no police presence. I mean, Reverend Father Kuka always mentions is that where he's from in southern Kaduna, that there is no federal presence, that the only federal presence they had was an ambulance that brought in a soldier that died. So there are quite a number of ungoverned or governed spaces in Nigeria that the leadership has not taken advantage of supervising. And that's where some of this insecurity bandits comes in. Unfortunately, it's now coming closer home. I mean, the incident we talked about in Abuja happened right in Abuja. It's not in Gwagwalada. It happened inside Abuja. I mean, where you expect more safety. So we're losing it, and it seems as if the president himself will not do the right thing. You know, in all of these conversations around insecurity, how many times has the police or the military leadership ever been fired for a lapse?